Hello and welcome to episode 236 of the Random Nintendo Podcast. I'm Jason.
I'm Angel.
And we have no Kevin.
Yeah, I was kind of waiting for the I'm Kevin.
Yeah, it's, what a way to celebrate his 1 year anniversary month as, third chair is to just not be here. But no, he was doing a 24-hour live stream because he was dared to do it. And, when you're dared, you have to stop podcasting and start live streaming. That's just how it goes.
Definitely it's a valid excuse to miss the podcast. Literally 24 hours of playing games straight. Even I haven't done that. That is nuts.
Yeah, so
entertaining an audience.
Even I have my limits.
Oh yeah, I know at most I've maybe played 13 hours straight or something like that, but yeah, never 24 hours. And not to mention he also has an audience, so he kind of has to stay, on.
Right.
It's not like you could just kind of sink into your sofa or whatever,
or be in some sort of half days where you're just hitting A repeatedly and you're not actually playing but you say you're playing.
So he's definitely
so it's understandable
dead right now, but yeah,
he's here in spirit. I kind of wanted to make a soundboard and I was gonna do all the Kevinisms from the past year of him being third chair, and then I realized there's only one Kevinism really that he does, which is the Persona one that yeah, baby, I love Persona or whatever it is. That's the only one he does. So I realized if we had a soundboard,
does he?
That's the only. He's done it a dozen times. But
really? Wait, what exactly?
Yeah, baby,
Persona?
love Persona. Anytime you say Persona.
Wait, yeah, baby.
Yeah, every time.
Oh, he does say yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby, love Persona with the love like that. But so I was gonna hunt it down and do it until I realized we don't ever say Persona this episode. Now we would have triggered it 6 times, but we don't actually have Persona to talk about.
We
so
said Persona more times in this episode than any other now.
So I guess I should have made the soundboard. Yeah. Well, sorry to all the Kevin fans out there for not only not having him, but not having his voice on loop on demand. But we're calling this episode the kind of old school around Nintendo, where it's just me and Angel. Indie World Tour, because after the recent Indie World Showcase, there's a lot of cool looking games to talk about, and we're also literally one of the games is from halfway around the world, India. So we'll be sharing impressions of Raji and Ancient Epic. But that's not the only presentation there is to talk about. We've also got thoughts on the second Nintendo Direct Mini Partner Showcase, which did seem to kind of be tweaked based on fan feedback, so that was kind of nice to see. And some of the games like Puyo Tetris 2 we'll be talking about. Plus we've got news from, just a discussion, really, of Gamescom happening right now. And there's credible reports about a Switch hardware revision, actual real reports, not the rumor mill, and impressions, maybe, depending on time, of some other stuff. So, it's going to be a pretty game-heavy show, so much so that it almost feels like maybe we just don't do the usual what we're playing segment and just go presentation by presentation and kind of talk about the games throughout and what we've been playing throughout. And even then, we're not going to cover every single game. It's 40 games or something. So we're just going to highlight the ones that stuck out to us. So maybe now more than ever, the timestamps at ramtown.com or under this video if you're on our ramtown.com YouTube channel, those are going to come in handy. But yeah, I guess, Angel, if you're ready, let's kick it off with the first presentation, which was also the first presentation sequentially.
Oh, they're the Indie Showcase.
Yeah, the Indie World Showcase, which I at least thought had quite a nice variety of games. We're used to seeing the artsy indie platformers, and those were there, and they look good, I might add. Evergate looks nice, but there were a lot of very different ideas, different games, different styles. What did you think of the showcase overall?
I like the variety. I know the last time we talked about an indie showcase or something, I was I think one of our talking points was just how we were looking for, or maybe me specifically, just new, very different art styles. Just a new, just new interpretation, just new way to play games. And I feel like this showcase definitely delivered on that. There were just a lot of different art styles. There weren't all pixel 2D platformers. There weren't all top down. There was it felt like there was a little bit of everything, and definitely something for everybody. I love there's that one game that's half stop motion, half kind of clean flash animated
Takeshi and Hiroshi, I think it's called.
Yeah. And then there's Manifold Garden that has a very interesting vector see-through art layout, and then there's others like Hypnospace Outlaw that just looks like a 90s internet browser. So it was really cool. And then there was that game that looked like I mean, I don't want to say like a Hori knockoff, but I mean Ori. But
yeah, that was Evergate. Yeah.
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 I mean, even then, like, I mean, if you're gonna knock off a game, I mean, Ori's not a bad one to knock off.
No, there's definitely, and then you had some like totally out of left field ones, like a management game, but you're a bear managing a bed and breakfast.
Yeah, bear
and breakfast. Which, by the way, how many of these games do you think they come up with the title and then build the game around versus the other way around? Like Bear and Breakfast is just a really good name. Like, do you think someone's saying, you're like, what if I game called Bear and Breakfast?
I could see it coming out either way. Like someone just randomly saying the name, like, you know what, let's make a game out of that, or someone just has a good idea for a B&B kind of game, and they're like, you know what, if it's going to be an indie game, it has to have some quirky twist. All right, it's going to be managed by a bear.
Yeah, or they, actually that's what I was about to say, is it probably is something like where they had the idea of the game, they're like, well, what's the star going to be? And then they come up with the marketing angle and go, make it a bear. And then they kind of retroactively apply it. But you did mention one game that I guess we could start with just because you already said it.
Alliteration.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yes, it's perfect in every naming way. As a fan of wordplay, I'm very on board with it. But yeah, let's talk about a game that you already brought up. Why don't we start with some, because we're just going to run through a few of our favorites, right? So how about we talk about Hypnospace Outlaw, which, like you said, has a crazy 90s aesthetic, to put it lightly.
So I haven't played it yet, and I know there's a demo for it, but
yeah,
like it was definitely probably one of the ones that stuck out with me the most. Not because it's a kind of game that I would like be crazy about playing. It just looked really interesting. Like the fact that you're browsing the web trying to catch like hackers and people planning viruses, and I guess also just navigating and just discovering this version of the 90s internet, which pretty much looks like Netscape or something like that.
Yeah,
like back when we had dial-up and everything. And I know there is a demo out, so I mean, if you want to try that, I know. I have played it.
Yeah, I could tell you a bit about what it's like. Yeah, because the thing that I found so interesting about the demo is, I mean, first of all, to your point about like they made this fake internet, like really, you see it in the footage in the showcase, but they really like created not just fake internet, but like a whole fake operating system, or HypnoS as they call it, in which you actually like have a little computer you're running. There's a music player, there's a download manager, you can post sticky notes to yourself, there's all these different things, and the web browser, like you go always, it's basically a like an intranet almost, where it's like all these fake websites, and yeah, your goal is to hunt down hackers and baddies on it. And I did try the demo, and I think my biggest takeaway from it is that it's actually more structured and game-like than it lets on. Like, that's not to say you don't have the freedom, to customize your desktop or download random MIDIs and play them from your music player from this like fake internet. But contrary to how it looked in the the showcase, where I was like, what? How is this a game? Like the actual gameplay is there, and basically how it works is you receive a new assignment via email. You go out into an open world setting. In this case, it's a spoofed internet. And then you go meet the goals of the assignment. So like for the demo, this meant locating, identifying copyright infringements, which I did by, I go to the browser, I enter a search term for the character that's being infringed upon, and then you go to these specific websites and you click around and you read it, and it's all really well written and stuff, and then you find what you're looking for. You enable a tool that basically lets you click on each copyright infringement, and then once you have 4, you can then flag the user, at which point you go back to your email to collect your reward, like it would be a bounty in any other game. And I'm sure, in the full game there's going to be a lot more variety, but my point is, it's kind of amazing how they like grafted the everyday idea of surfing the web on top of a very structured, almost traditional gameplay formula. And it actually works like pretty well. Plus, to your point about the aesthetic, I think like, having them ham up the late 90s and early 2000s like really makes it sort of like, with this like flashy lo-fi internet thing. I mean, obviously that's trendy right now, like the nostalgia of that era, but it definitely has a look. It's trippy, it's funny, it's well written. Just in the demo even, and beyond just the one mission, you can actually like poke around their fake internet a bit and read some stuff, and it's really well done. And the other thing that kind of surprised me was how it controls, because like on PC where it's lived for a while already, it actually has mouse and keyboard support on the Switch. Like apparently Nintendo suggested to them that they add it. So if you dock the Switch and use the USB, You can actually play it like it's really the internet for an authentic experience. But even without that, what surprised me, although it shouldn't have, it uses touch control if you're playing in handheld mode on Switch. So, like, yeah, you can use buttons and sticks if you're playing on your TV, and, you know, like, one stick is your mouse cursor, another stick lets you go element by element down the page. There's, like, scrolling options. You can use the shoulder buttons to do, like, shortcuts back and forward between web pages. You know, hitting X closes an app, you know, all that. But, like, if you want to just pretend you're really on the internet, just put it in handheld mode and just tap and touch and scroll, and it's just like, you know, like a tablet or something. Which really does kind of make it, like, feel that much more real, even though it's like this fake mirrored, like, parody internet where they're making fun of all these big corporate companies. And I mean, literally, the OS is called HypnoS. Like, it's all about, like, kind of the mind control and everything. So it is really well done. I don't know if
like glowing impressions.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know if I'm going to buy it. Well, that's the thing. I don't know. So, like, that's where things get weird for me. Because on the one hand, like, I'm all about the concept. I mean, my website building roots, really like Random Tales roots, go way back to GeoCities, Angel Fire Tripod era. That's, like, where this all started for me. So I'm very, like, in that world. And that is what they're spoofing. But, you know, and even, like, my day job as, like, a community manager, it often involves content moderation. I mean, similar to what I had to do in the demo. Like, there have legitimately been times where I've gotten a request from our legal department about takedown notice, and I had to go hunt it down because I wasn't, you know, they didn't identify the content correctly or whatever. So the fact that I now experience this, like, almost exactly how I do in real life in a game, gamified, is kind of cool. And then, you know, like, the keyboard support and the touch kind of further emphasizes that.
But I guess it's like, why would I want to play a game of that when I do that every day?
Exactly. But at the same time, like, it's kind of cool to be like, oh, this is me. Like, you know how this could sound really cheesy, but you know how people are like, oh, this, like, movie or game, like, represents me. In a weird way, this is, like, the most accurate representation of my life in a game. But paradoxically, because of all that, like, it's almost too real. Yeah. So, like, you know, poking around the demo, even beyond just the one goal, provided that, you know, it showed me there's a ton of diverse content tucked into this fake internet, but I spend so much time monitoring and doing things on the real internet. Like, it's like doing my job in some sort of weird, heightened, extreme, neon-soaked version of it, where there's actually a literal talking head that cracks jokes and things like that. But so, like, that's kind of cool, but, like, at the same time, I'm just like, this is not much of an escape. It's kind of the same thing. So I don't know if I'm actually going to buy it, but it does seem incredibly well done at what it does. I mean, is it something now that you know a bit more that you think you'd pick up, or?
No, unfortunately not. Like, I mean, the thing is also, like, I've been giving myself, like, a week now to decide whether a game has enough, like, sticking power in my head. And yeah, if there's a demo, like, I'll definitely try it. I mean, I haven't tried this one yet, but that's only because I've started playing other things. And I think, I just want to see how well its concepts, like, hold up a week later. Like, am I still just as excited to play it? If so, then I'll buy it. If not, then, you know what? I'll move on. And I'll kind of see that as, like a bar to the game, which, you know, might be a little unfair, but kind of how we had that conversation in Quarantine Chronicles. Like, our time is very valuable, and sometimes, like, especially, like, the older we get, like, with the jobs that we have, and between the shows, movies, and games that we are still clamoring to watch, we just have to be really picky. So
yeah,
trailers now are just that much more important now than ever. And while I was excited about it the first week, it just kind of remained as like, oh, that's a cool thought. But that's kind of where it went.
No, I know what you mean, because another game
I want to play Fall Guys, and I still haven't even played Fall Guys.
There are rumors that things coming to Switch, which I really hope are true. Someone found something in the PC version's code that points to, like, Joy-Con icons or something. So
hopefully that's true, because I could definitely see myself playing it on the Switch because there's other friends we could play it with. But, like, honestly, the, like, whole aesthetic of Fall Guys, it feels so Nintendo already. Yeah, like, it does look very nice, but so I don't even think it would really hurt it that much. I mean, I still think Rocket League looks great, but that's because I haven't seen the PC version yet. Right. Speaking of which, is it free yet?
I believe they're switching it over sometime this month if they have. Well, this month is over in 2 days, so probably. Actually, this month is over tomorrow, not in 2 days.
Yeah, I need per Kevin's suggestion, download that game and see what I've been missing out on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the only thing that would slow down Fall Guys is there are, like, 65 of those little Fall Guys running around at any given time. So I could see that potentially maybe causing some issues. But then again, the GameCube ran Mario 128. Remember that demo where they had 128 Marios running on a surface?
Yeah,
so...
but Nintendo seems to be struggling to get Smash Brothers working online when there's like more than 2 people on.
Oh, that's Nintendo's own netcode, I feel like. Like, Fall Guys... I don't think the netcode's going to be the issue. I think it's going to be the processing power of processing all that data locally once it has it.
I mean, luckily, it looks like it's literally just like a 2-button game, just a jump and a dive.
It's Battle Royale Mario Party. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, it's Mario Party. It's what online Mario Party could have and maybe should have in retrospect been. It's just like, never mind the minigames being 4 people. Like, do like a crazy, like, new set of online-oriented mass multiplayer minigames.
Well, hopefully it comes out soon.
Yeah, hopefully.
I mean, I do have it on PS5. I mean, 4, but...
PS5?
Yeah,
did you let slip? No.
I wish I had one.
That'd be cool if you had one. Now would be the greatest time to have one before it comes out, because you don't have to worry about anyone seeing it, because no one can come over.
That's true, but if I'm going to get one, I want to wait for the inevitable
all black
powder version, if they ever do one.
Yes.
It seems like they always do like a pro version. Well, at least they did with the PS4, so I feel like they would do that with the PS5.
Right. They'll at least do a redesign halfway through the generation.
Well, I just want the game mixes, like the Monster Hunter version, the God of War version, if they ever do one. Just because all the ones we have now have been exclusive editions, so I might as well keep that tradition going.
Right. There are rumors, by the way, of not a PS4, but there are rumors that a new Monster Hunter for Switch will be announced in the not too distant future.
Oh, it's changing back to Nintendo?
They might. Well, yeah, it did super well on the handhelds. I think it's probably going to be not
that
something.
World was doing really well.
It did. It also did super well. I think what they're going to do is fork it a little and do like, sort of like how Final Fantasy has like the mainline games and the spin-off games depending on your platform. I could see them doing like a traditional, old school, however you want to word it, Monster Hunter for Switch, and then doing World 2 on PS5 and Series X or something. Because there's enough diversity in the gameplay that they could probably fork it. But we'll see. But to your point, you made a good point about like, there's trailers and you kind of assess, are you going to get this game, and you kind of decide, is it still with you a week later? I am in that sort of weird, I mean, granted it's not out till next year, I think, but I'm kind of in that headspace with Card Shark, which was one of the other highlights for me in the presentation. It actually is weirdly similar in concept to Hypnospace in a way. Not in terms of what it actually does, but it's like, I mean, conceptually, like in the way that Hypnospace focuses on the idea of something like the internet and turns that into a game, Card Shark turns not card games into a video game. There's plenty of those, but specifically how to like cheat at card games into a video game. And Digital Devolver isn't saying like too much yet on what that entails, but what stuck out to me is apparently the game is going to be teaching you real card tricks as you go. And as you progress through the game,
real card cheating tricks?
I don't know about necessarily
kicked
cheating.
Out of Vegas, I guess?
Yeah, like I don't know if it's full on cheating or just like tricks and tips or what, but yeah, I mean they do warn you like be careful not to get caught cheating. But yeah, they're going to teach you ones that actually are applicable with any card game anywhere, it seems like. Like it's going to be based on real card tricks. But then kind of like Hypno again, so you got this concept, something that you wouldn't think would be a game is now a game, unique art style. So this one's like 1700s France as presented through, I don't even know what to call the style. It's like old-timey storybook, like the artwork that would come with a deck of cards. Like I don't really know what it would be, but whatever it is, it's pretty distinct. I thought it looked super cool. And, it's one of those things that like, am I gonna, and this happens a lot. There's so many games I call out on the show, and then when it comes out, do I buy it? I don't know. But like, I am very intrigued about Card Shark. I have all these unanswered questions right now. My biggest of which is like, how's the game going to work in terms of progression? Like, the premise is you take your winnings and reinvest them in bigger games, working your way kind of up into royal circles of card games. But they also warn, like I was saying before, that you could get caught cheating. And then they also mention that there's roguelike progression, which presumably means no two card games are going to be the same. But like, how is it? And then on top of that, they say like progression is mapped to mastering a technique. And then you unlock a next one, and that's how you kind of move up. So, like, how's that work if it's roguelike, and what happens if you get caught cheating? And, like, does cheating just mean you failed at the technique? Like, there's all these sorts of weird – there's so much I don't know about how the gameplay works, I guess. And, I don't know how it's all going to fold into one another, pun intended. But thank you. But, yeah, it's like one of those things that watching it, it's just like, oh, this is really cool, and I want to keep an eye on this. But I'm pretty sure come next year, unless – all those answers line up in just the right way, I don't know if I'm going to pick it up. But, and that's a lot of the games in the showcase where it's just like, oh, that's really cool. That's a neat idea. But, like, does it resonate with you longer term? Does what it evolve into in terms of actual gameplay pan out in a way you want to invest your time in? Like, that's the thing with all these presentations is you don't quite know.
Yeah, and there were at least like 3 or 4 different like community management like sim games. Like there was like the 2 bread and breakfasty looking ones, like the one that looks like the Sagwa the Chinese cat cartoon.
Spirit Fair. Which they showed in a presentation before. It was actually its second appearance, and it came out.
But like that one, Bed and Breakfast, the
Garden Story.
Like the one that looks like Stardew Valley. Like, I know they're all like different, but yeah, it's like I don't think I'm gonna. And as polished as they look, I don't think I'm gonna check out any of them.
Yeah, but and that's kind of, I mean, that is the advantage of the Switch having, 60 million owners now, is like there's enough of an audience that different ones can tailor to. Like, if you want to be like, I like the concept of Stardew Valley, but I really wish I was a tomato. Well, Garden Story now exists, and you could be a tomato. So like, there is going to be like audiences for all of these, I think. But
where's Sports Story?
Sports Story got delayed. They announced it the day before the direct, and that's kind of one of those things with these indies as well, is you never really know when they're actually going to come out. Which we'll get to in a minute, but I did want to say, for all the games that were like, oh hey, it looks cool, but I'm not going to buy it. There is one that I actually impulsively bought. There is one that I actually followed through on, and that was Raji, an Ancient Epic. Yeah, so this to me was frankly like, it wasn't the most unique game of the bunch, but it was the most eye catching in the showcase to me. And like I was saying at the start of our episode, it's a game that actually comes to us from a dev team in India. A place where a lot of mobile games are made, but very few console games reach a broader international audience. So right away, it's like, oh, this is like a different perspective from a dev team that doesn't normally get to reach out to like the Americas or the bigger parts of Europe or whatever. And that's not the only time it's unique about it. Like, as unique as the origins may be, the game also is heavily reliant on Indian culture. It's set within Hindu and Balinese mythology, has a really cool kind of ancient India aesthetic. And when I saw it, I was just like, oh, this is actually really interesting. And I started doing some reading about it just to see like what the backstory here is. And it turns out this really is like this passion project from a small group of developers in India. They're comprised of ex-EA and Rockstar and Zynga employees, and they formed this new company called Nottingham Games. And initially, I guess it was a Kickstarter back in like 2017, but then it didn't meet its goal. And they still believed in it, so they shopped it around to publishers, all around the world. They're pretty much met with no's across the board. Even the console manufacturer, even the console manufacturers, like the process of getting a dev kit to India was difficult because they don't normally send dev kits to India. Like that world doesn't connect with ours in that sense. Like in the sense of like they don't know where the dev kits are going to end up. There's not a huge gaming community in India of developers for console games. And at one point, I guess one of the project leads actually sold their apartment just to get enough money to keep funding the project. And then ultimately, like right when it was about to go under, right when they hit a wall, Epic Games pulled through with their Unreal Engine dev grant and gave them a chunk of money to keep going. And then it kind of, things fell into place. Then a British publisher named like Super.com, they agreed to serve as the publisher, they are now the publisher. And fast forward, to this presentation a couple weeks ago, and boom, Nintendo's now featuring Raji in their indie showcase on the day of its release, and it resonated, I feel like, with me and a lot of others. So it is kind of like one of those little, like, inspirational, like if you try, you can succeed. Like if you believe in your vision, you can succeed. So from that perspective, the game's really cool. Like I'm really happy for its developers, and knowing that the devs were putting themselves out there to tell the stories of their culture, ones that are rarely featured in gaming. I was pretty on board with it just off the backstory. Like at that point, I was like, I'm gonna buy it regardless. Doesn't matter if it's great or not. Like I just like that they were this passionate about getting their tale out there through gaming. But what I think, what stuck with me most once I started playing it, is you can see that they really poured their all into this game. Like even if they did at one point struggle to develop the thing, like presentation wise, it looks gorgeous. Like the game's in kind of this cinematic, isometric perspective where the camera's fixed, but it changes and swoops and stuff, and as you go through the environments. But like the environments themselves, like the lighting, the fire effects, the architecture, the inclusion of like traditional style Indian artwork, like the little animation details when you run around as Raji. It all really pops. It looks really good. Like it looks not like a cheap indie game. Like they really put the effort in. Same with the music and just like the way it tells its story, of which I'm maybe, I don't know, halfway through right now. But the way it tells it, it really does feel like you're hearing an old folk tale being passed down. Like they have these cutscenes narrated like like a fairy tale would be. And it's all presented this really cool, like, shadow puppet style. And then even when in the game, you have, that kind of zoomed out perspective, but you are hearing a running dialogue of, like, the Hindu god's musings. And it does kind of feel like a myth being passed down to you, because it's, it's one that tells of this girl, Raji, who, in a nutshell, her little brother's stolen by demons, and it's up to her with the god's assistance to get him back. The gods think she's like maybe is a chosen one that can wield some godlike powers. And then as you're going through it, you kind of have the gods debating like, oh, is she fit for this? Is she not? Like, oh, and kind of cheering her on or scolding her or whatever. And I'm obviously not super familiar with Hindu mythology, so a decent amount of the game is kind of going over my head. But one thing I have been appreciating is that the game almost at times turns into a bit of an edutainment experience. Like as you go through the various levels, there are points where you are taught the basics of like each god's background and some of the interactions with one another.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and it's like on the one hand,
especially because it's a culture that we're, like you said, like definitely very unfamiliar with over here.
Yeah, and like they do.
Like I feel like every other game is like Greek myth or Norse based. Because I know there's like one game that would also showcase Hades, and then there's another one that came out not too long ago that was also based on Norse mythology.
Yeah, there was Badlands. No, not Badlands. Badlands?
Maybe, but yeah, like you said, Raji.
But yeah, no. So that's really cool that they do that. And like you said, like there are other games that do it with like Norse or Greek or Egyptian. Like the game. At the end of the day, this game is basically through an Indian lens, a kind of isometric perspective Prince of Persia or like early God of War style action game. Which makes those edutainment moments kind of weird in a way. Like it's really cool, but also like they sort of slow down the pace. Like can you imagine if you're doing God of War and then like halfway through there's like, all right, hold up. We're going to teach you about mythology for a minute. And it's just like, it just kind of stops and you're just looking at like cool imagery of mythology. Like that kind of happens. So, and that's sort of like indicative of a lot of the game actually. Like I was talking about how pretty it is, right? Well, while on one hand, yeah, it looks great. The downside is that when there's a lot happening on screen, the frame rate really can't chug. And this is both true in handheld and even when docked. And I mean, like, even playing on my TV, I notice little things like shadow pop in and other minor graphical glitches. And it's one of those things that, like, it's not a big deal. They say a patch is on the way, so it'll probably fix that. But at some point, you gotta wonder, like, is having the tiny fish that swim in the pool next to where you're walking really worth the frame rate chug that kicks in or the lag that kicks in when they're swimming? Like, they kind of, at times, were so ambitious with their vision that they bit off a little more than they could chew, which I feel like, for better or worse, is a bit indicative of the gameplay, too, because there's a lot of really neat ideas in here. Like, at its core, you're going room to room. It's very linear. There's enemies that spawn in groups of, like, 3 to 6, and you fight them, and you have a number of moves to do so, as well as multiple weapons to do so, and you earn new weapons as you go. There's, like, a staff and a bow and arrow for, short range versus long range. I mean, they have the whole skill tree thing in place that lets you, use more advanced, powerful moves by, like, one that I like using is, like, it summons this giant ball of electricity that stuns all the enemies so you can run around and hit them all. And, I sort of said this in passing already, but it's very much the gameplay style of, like, mid-2000s Prince of Persia, but zoomed out. And so that's all good, right? And the move variety is pretty good, too. Like, Raji's acrobatic in a very Prince of Persia way, like, in battle, you can run up walls and do backflips. That can then be combined with different attack buttons. You can swing around poles and do attacks that way. And even like outside combat, you're doing stuff like running sideways on walls, which is straight up Prince of Persia, or like sliding down tapestries. So good variety. But I found that ultimately you keep coming back to the same few attacks. Like you only really have one way to get away from enemies, which is a dodge roll. But they seem to be able to hit you while you're in mid-roll, which kind of makes it a little tough. So if they corner you well, you're basically stuck until you're dead. And for smaller demons that you're fighting, they don't even clearly define the attack patterns or use any sort of signal to the player. So you could very easily think you're dodging away, but actually they're already coming at you with a hit. Well, it looks like they're just not. So a lot of the combat, as you get to more intense battles, leaves you with the choice of basically either using a long-range weapon, or if you want to try the fancier moves, kind of just crossing your fingers and hoping the timing works out. Like, even if you ignore that maybe I'm just not good at battles, which I'm not, it does feel a bit too luck-based, even though conceptually it's all there. They have such a deep battle system, so many different moves. The devs did, all this variety, and yet it boils down to I was just using the bow and arrow from afar, and that's pretty much the only way that I was making a serious progress. And that sort of concern, I guess, spills into other gameplay decisions, too. Like, they have this puzzle mechanic where you have to spin rings to form an image. It's actually weirdly similar to how Paper Mario Origami King's battlefields are laid out. Where you do the ring spin to line everything up correctly. And those images they form, they do shed some light into Raji and her brother's backstory and their relationship with the gods. And again, from a storytelling perspective, it's pretty cool. But and the art's really intricate. Don't get me wrong; it looks really nice. But then it's kind of undercut by two things. I mean, first, in order to spin them into place, you use the R and L shoulder buttons, and they go very, very slowly. You can't just use a stick and spin it. You have to just sort of thing. And second, you don't really have a point of reference to what the image should look like. So I actually found myself doing is not trying to line up the image. I would just kind of mindlessly tap L and R until the game indicated with a little glow, oh, this is where it needs to be. And I had no idea why it was already forming until it was already formed. So it felt like it was a kind of cool puzzle idea that they then sort of undercut by how they presented it. And there's a slightly more egregious version too, where you're doing it with a 3D statue of a tree or forming a tree. So it's along the Z axis instead of, a flat circle. And again, not a bad idea. Imagery is really cool when it's done. The game looks gorgeous, but you don't really know what you're making. You can't really tell. And then when it just clicks in a place, you're like, oh, that's a face. But you really couldn't tell until it sort of did it for you. So yeah, so it has its issues. But even with all these complaints, I am still enjoying the game. I think a big part of it is the unique setting and just experiencing a game like that. Even if the gameplay isn't something super new, the environment and the world are so new that it sort of it keeps me going. And like any sort of, I guess, action combat game, it can be frustrating in the moment, especially when you feel like it boils down to luck. But when you do persevere, it does feel gratifying. And there are some cool bosses, kind of like God of War has the big bosses. So there are some cool bosses. I just think at this point, the best I could do is give Raji kind of a tepid recommendation. If you're going in knowing some of the pain points and you're willing to overlook that for the world you don't typically see in games, it's cool, it's worthwhile. It does cost $25, but when you see the graphics, the cutscenes, what have you, it makes sense that you're essentially paying for those production values. Plus, like I said, there's a patch coming, so maybe they'll resolve a lot of this. But as of now, it's to our point about the trailers, kind of people judge by the trailer. This is one where it looked amazing. In reality, it has some issues, but it's still cool if you have the time to let it kind of prove itself to you, at least presentation wise, if that makes sense. But
I can see that.
Yeah, so it's an interesting game because I very rarely instantly buy an indie game from these showcases, and this time I did, and that's some of the pain points that come with it are little design decisions, they're a small team, they have to focus on certain things, and they chose presentation over some of the gameplay choices, which is a totally reasonable thing to do when you're trying to tell a tale about your culture's history and everything. So
for the price, would you say it's worth checking out, or do you think that actually kind of hurt a little too much? I mean, just objectively, just straight up talking about the price, basically.
I think it's a little high priced. I think it's worth, it depends on what you're going in there for. I think as an overall package, $25 is a bit much. As you're playing it, you're oh, this is all I'm paying $25, because the production is nuts. It looks really good.
Yeah, some of those bosses look pretty crazy.
And the game's not super long. It's, from what I gathered, I'm about halfway, and from what I gathered, it ends kind of abruptly. It ends on a cliffhanger as if they're going to do a sequel, but it's building towards it, and it just stops. So there's also that to consider. I feel the fact that they had it on sale at first as part of the Indie World, sale when they did the showcase, so it was 22 instead of 25. Even 22 feels, I feel like 20 or 18 or 15 might have been more of a sweet spot. But again, given what I know about the backstory of the game, I understand why they charged what they charged. But yeah, it's definitely on the pricier side for what it is, I'd say.
That's cool.
Yeah, but yeah, so
it's unfortunate, but hopefully, I'm sure if it got a lot of traction because of the Indie Direct showcase, maybe it'll get a special sale later. It wasn't on sale by default. I feel like a lot of these.
No, it was. It was $3 off. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I guess I wouldn't say that's substantial.
Well, yeah, I know. But
Yeah,
Nintendo's not gonna. All the games that were shown in the showcase were only on
No,
sale
yeah,
for a
yeah.
couple bucks. Yeah.
I mean, I think it would have to be like 7 to 8 off for that to actually sway someone that's on the fence. $3, I don't think that's going to make a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, did it make a difference to you? Were you going to get it?
I was going to get it either way. I was going to get it either way. But yeah, it is one of those things that, like, and that's one of the nice things about Indie World is the fact that these developers were able to get this into Indie World. Like, that is a lot of attention they wouldn't have had otherwise. You know, like a game like Alpaca Ball All Stars, like that comes out in a couple weeks or a month in October, I think. It's basically, you know, I think we talked about it on the show before. It's Rocket League with alpacas, which is amazing. But like that, you know, that's not getting into Indie World, and that's its own kind of crazy cool concept. But so that might not get the same traction as something like Raji or what have you. So like it makes the difference. Like these showcases really can make or break a developer's success on the Switch, I feel like, especially with discoverability becoming so much harder.
Do you know how much of it is Nintendo finding these games and going like, hey, we want to showcase you on this thing? Or is it developers going, all right, we know someone and we have enough money to allow Nintendo to give us attention?
Is that it's both. So what Nintendo does with all these indies is they have a whole team who has had some turnover, but they had a whole team that is in charge of being like liaisons for the indies. So they send them dev kits, they check in, they make sure they're using the tools correctly. They have the game sent to them for lot check, and they do bug testing, make sure it doesn't crash the Switch, you know, all that stuff. So Nintendo has a running list of pretty much all of these games that are coming to Switch. And likewise, they, you know, and they like approve them essentially. Like there's a reason there's no adult only games on Switch. Nintendo is saying that, like, they can't sneak it on there without them noticing. Likewise, they also do outreach programs where they go to PAX,
with some of the games on the Switch, I would imagine some did sneak by, but...
Well, it's more like Nintendo is only doing... I mean, you're right, yeah, but it's more like Nintendo only does it based on content, not quality.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I guess their approval ratings are like, will it crash a Switch? No?
Yeah, pretty much. But and keep in mind, there's like, you know, dozens coming out every week now, so even their lot check is like... There's dozens of us. No, but even their lot check gets, you know, some stuff will slip through. But Nintendo also, what they do is they do sort of work with the indies to find new projects who have come to Switch. And yeah, I think that, to your point of which way does it go, I think goes both ways. Because we've seen it firsthand when we went to, you know, the indie showcases at E3 that we do on the rooftop, the mix. Yeah, when we do that, or like when I was at PAX East, or like when we go even down to Comic-Con sometimes, like there are Nintendo people like scouting out these smaller devs and talking to them and trying to convince them to bring it to Switch. Like, how many games, I mean, you mentioned Manifold Garden, right? When we were talking about visual games. At E3 last year, we played that on PC in the Indiecade section, and that wasn't coming to Switch at that time. Right next to it was, what was it called? Earth Night. Yeah. And that also wasn't coming to Switch at the time. But like people from Nintendo, like Damon Baker when he was there, or Kirk Scott, who took his place, who also has since left, their job is basically to go around at these conventions and check out the games and be like, hey, have you considered bringing this to Switch? If they think there's some potential there. And then I'm sure as part of that conversation, these showcase slots are booked. So... But I'm at the same time, though, like Digital Devolver, they're a huge indie publisher, and I'm sure they went to Nintendo like, check out Card Shark. You guys want to reveal this? And they're like, oh, you're Digital Devolver. Sure, that's a big get for us. So I'm sure it's a two-way street. Yeah. The one I don't understand, though, is Torchlight. Like, I mean, I know it's not like a publisher in the traditional... Like, the company that put out Torchlight is Perfect World. They have their hand in games like... Big games like Star Trek Online and... NetherRealm or Neverwind, and like they have all sorts of like MMOs and stuff. So it's kind of odd to see them be like an indie in the same way that it's odd to see like Microsoft's games show up as indies, because technically the developers are. But like Torchlight kind of like not every game in the showcase necessarily I felt like it should be in the showcase. Like Torchlight's fine, but it just isn't really indie in that sense. So, you know, sometimes some of the choices are a little strange. But
so you're saying they're kind of like way forward?
Torchlight? Or I mean, Perfect World?
Well, the developer.
Kind of. Yeah, they're. I mean,
they don't really feel like an indie sometimes.
But yeah, but they would still end up in the indie showcase, so I guess it makes some sense. But no, I feel like Perfect World, like they've been around for a while. They're like this huge. I think they're owned by like a Chinese conglomerate or something. But they're just big MMO maker. So it's kind of funny to see it be like, oh, but check out this little tiny, this struggling little company, Perfect World. Here's their new game, Torchlight 3. But I guess Nintendo has a strict definition of what is a major publisher and what is indie, and they fall under the indie side. Which, speaking of, there's one other game we haven't mentioned yet, which is Torchlight 3.
Normally a game I would have ignored.
Same, but it's funny because this is one we're for sure both going to be playing. Even though
I'm actually looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Both times that I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, because we've been playing Torchlight 2, I was like, oh, this game looks kind of cool. But then I turned around and I think I missed the title screen. So I never knew that it was announced until later on.
Yeah.
And then when I saw the trailer again, I'm all like, oh, this game looks kind of cool. Like, oh, look at those pets. I'm like, oh, this is Torchlight 3. It's like, oh, I'm even more excited for it.
Yeah, so you and I have been playing Torchlight 2 for, a couple months now, probably, because we've been playing it with one of our Twitter buddies. And
yeah,
it's fun because I don't usually play those sorts of games. But yet, here we are. I think we played for about 2 months, and Torchlight 3 comes up. I'm like, oh, cool. Which I never would have had that reaction to before. Like, I don't play Diablo. I don't play, any of that. And
the Marvel superhero one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess Ultimate Alliance I did play in college. We collectively, a group of us, went through the Wii one. So I take that back. I played some, but yeah, I never really got into it that much. But
yeah, we never go out of our way to play games like this.
Yeah, but now here's Torchlight 3, and Torchlight 3 has a weird history. So I guess originally it was going to be a free-to-play spin-off, and then they dropped the free-to-play elements, and now it's getting the proper sequel. So it's called something else, and then they put the 3 on it, and now it's in beta on Steam, but coming to Switch, this time at launch with the PC version in the fall, unlike Torchlight 2, which was years later. But yeah, I feel like now that I've played Torchlight 2, I sort of have a wish list for what I want in this sequel. There are a couple things that I really want them to address. I mean, first we should probably talk. We never really talked about Torchlight 2. So what do you think of Torchlight 2 as a game? What are your impressions of it?
It gets kind of a slow start, but if you're playing with friends, it's really fun. It takes some time to get used to. It takes a while to get familiar with the menus, I guess kind of like any roguelike kind of game, but
so many menus.
It has more depth than what is even taught to you. That we were lucky that we had a friend that has played it before, so he was kind of telling us about don't spread out your skills that much because you don't get enough skills to max everything out. So you're pretty much forced to go a certain route and you can't take your skills back. So right away, you're like, all right, I'm not going to try to spread between, I guess, my dual, I forget what they call them, a dualomancer. Pretty much someone that uses 2 pistols and some other skill with, a staff. So it's even though my character can use a staff, they shouldn't use a staff. But I wish some stuff like that was a little clearer, basically.
I agree. What I find funny... Or go ahead.
Yeah, or just easier to start with, yeah.
Yeah, what I find funny about that is, there's one thing the game does that makes it very accessible intentionally, which is, unlike Diablo 3 or those sorts of, dungeon crawlers, they let everyone get their own loot stashes. You're not racing to each chest when you defeat an enemy in hopes that you'll get the good loot before your teammate does. You each have your own completely independent sets, and they're all spawned for everyone. So, you can beat someone, and I can pick up the loot from that same thing just as if I beat them, while I feel in Diablo and the other ones, you have a shared loot pile, so to speak. And that's a very good feature to make it more accessible. So no matter who you're playing with, you still can be rewarded. But then, yeah, they, and also stuff like,
yeah, that's something I didn't even think about until I encountered that in Final Fantasy XIV, where we got to a treasure chest, and then by the time I got to it, there was a weird system where I had to either click need, pretty much to let the other people know that I needed this, or that one of them could forfeit it,
right?
Or greed, which is I just want it just because, or pass, which it gives, pretty much it tries to give priority to whoever really needs it, and then it just keeps going down.
Yeah, and that's kind of nice.
Definitely interesting.
That's an interesting system, and it's more realistic in a way, but I do appreciate that Torchlight can be a little more casual because you just grab what you need.
For a game, sometimes I think this is just better.
And there's
for an online MMO, it does, I guess, add to the rarity and exclusivity of items, but for something like this, I think this is perfect, and
also, they have those super deep menus, but one thing that's really cool is they try not to disrupt the flow of when you're all out questing or whatever. So, you don't have to go back to town to sell stuff like in other games. You have a pet, as you were referencing, that you just, in your menu, just go, all right, get rid of these things, go sell them. And he'll just, scamper off and go sell them, and you can just keep questing.
It took me way too long to figure out how to do that. But I think
Yeah.
that's
Well, the
more
menus are
the
so
game's
convoluted. That's where they're
I think-
backwards. Yeah.
I mean, as annoying as some of these things could be, maybe they could add an option to turn it on and off in the beginning if you're a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of wish it kind of gave you like a forced tutorial.
Yes.
Like at some point, like even if it's not like just straight up like exposition, like I like some tutorials where, like let's say the first time you have too many items, the game will just kind of like stop you and it'll just say, like, all right, like press the pause button, and then it'll just highlight every single thing you have to click on to, like, put the stuff on your pet to send it back, because it is not
clear
like,
at all.
the most straightforward thing. Yeah.
No, and I
Especially
get
just like selling and like buying items. Like it's really easy to sell your own items. I still do that, and I've been playing this game
for 2
like
months.
I said, like for like like 2 months.
Yeah,
And I still do like little things like that, but
I think
you get used to, I mean, it becomes muscle memory eventually.
it does, yeah. But they do need to figure out a way to do that, because the idea of like teaching you as you go is crucial, but at the same time it does almost fly in the face of their other design decisions to keep the questing going. So there's got to be a middle ground they can find. Like maybe it's a tooltip or something the next time you open the menu. There's got to be a way.
I mean, I could see why they wouldn't stop you from moving to do a quest, because it is online and you're playing with friends. If you're near enemies when that happens, then you're just gonna die because you're just gonna keep getting attacked. So I don't know. Maybe when the first time you go back to town, I feel like that'd probably be the best
that'd be a
part.
good time. Yeah, and like that's one of the that's not the most egregious thing. That's something I hope they do fix with 3. I'd say the bigger thing they need to fix, the most like in your face issue, and apparently this is true of the PC version of 2 as well, is the load times are abysmal. Like they are bad. I mean, we're talking a minute plus, and every time you switch environments, every time you go to an area, like some of this is due to how expansive these environments can get. I get that, but like I really, really hope that they optimize that for Torchlight 3 a bit, or at least change up the loading screen art or something.
Yeah, I think the same art every single time. At one point, it just kind of got kind of annoying. Like at the beginning, I didn't mind. It's like, all right, these areas are they're kind of big, but at some point, I don't know. I think it was like the last session that we had. We were just like, damn, these load times are really long. Like, I don't know. We actually started pointing it out. That's how bad it was.
Yeah, it was bad. And like, it's bad enough that like you see the little the little tip. They have like, rotating sentences with gameplay tips, and you start seeing those loop, and it's just like, oh, okay. And I think that's something that obviously it's getting worse for us as we go, because there's more that has to load, more the environments as we discover more. They do like, that kind of fog of war thing where it only loads pieces until you start discovering all that has to load it all, because now you've seen it all. So that's factoring in, but there's got to be a way to optimize that somehow. Like, there has to be. I mean, if they can spend the time, like the Switch version of Torchlight 3 has an exclusive red fairy pet, so like if they could do that, they can maybe work on load times a little. Hopefully,
I mean, it's the load time for Breath of the Wild when you go out to the field from a shrine. Are they that long?
No, they're not. But also to be fair to Torchlight in that scenario, like Nintendo optimized it because as best they could, because it's their hardware, they know it in and out. This is Torchlight grafting a game from a different processor and a different thing on top of the Switch's hardware. Like, it's not native. So I in Torchlight's defense, like, I wouldn't say the Breath of the Wild comparison is totally fair. But I do have one other little nitpick. This is a personal one of mine. I know you don't necessarily have this problem as much with the game, but you gotta, in Torchlight 3 developers, who aren't Panic Button this time, it's someone else, but whoever's developing it, you gotta let me retroactively earn quest rewards. Like in any game like this, you're assigned quests by NPCs, right? You go to the dungeon, you do your thing, you're then rewarded. That's how you get more loot, how you grind your level higher. That's the gameplay loop in a nutshell. But if I'm playing collectively with our group and I haven't talked to an NPC yet, I can go with the group into a dungeon and the quest is completed. And even if I later talk to an NPC and have that quest then assigned, I can't turn around and say, hey, I already did this, give me my reward. And like, alternatively, you think maybe I could go.
You have to go back and grab the.
But not even that.
The special item.
But not even that, because I can go back to the dungeon and do it myself, you would think. But I have found that if I was already in the same gameplay session as with you guys and I go back, the thing I might need to do is already possibly gone. Because if it's like defeat a number of enemies or something like that, you guys already did that with me. I did that. But they're not there when I go back because we already did that. So I literally can't progress with that one quest, even though I already did the quest, you know? Like, it's like I didn't do the quest in name, but I did all the actions, and then the game remembers the actions. So if I go back, the dungeon's now empty. The item ones are easy enough. You go grab it from the chest you missed. But, like, the actual, if you missed it, but the actual, like, action-based ones, the game never seems to recognize. I haven't experimented if I go play solo, if I then go back, if it, like, suddenly is there again. But at least in the session where this game is so good at making sure you're all not holding each other back, that kind of holds it back. And I realize that's kind of a me problem because maybe I just missed the guy or whatever, but like still, it's not an ideal system. And like to be fair, you know, if I kept proper pace with you guys, maybe it wouldn't be an issue. But you know,
sure,
it's not great. But then again, and also in what was that? What were you mumbling?
No, I said I guess you do have to keep proper pace.
To be fair to Torchlight again, like I feel like we're kind of giving it a bad rap. It could be so much worse the way they're handling progression because like. Square Enix really is botching it with Crystal Chronicles Remastered, which, you know, is their version of this type of game. Like, for that, only the host gets the progression. Meaning, if your party of 4 wants to play together, you need to do each dungeon 4 times. And each dungeon visit requires a new online lobby, meaning you need to resync every time you want to do a dungeon, which is bonkers. So...
Just don't get disconnected, Jason. I know you have total control over that.
You mean in Torchlight? Yeah, but like I'm now on my head's already over to the Final Fantasy thing. Like, how insane is that? How did they take a game from 2003 and make it with weird multiplayer where you need 4 Game Boys, 4 link cables, a GameCube, and somehow make it more convoluted? Like how? So yeah, Torchlight. You know, it could be much worse. And
they took a bet.
You think they took it? They may have. Honestly, at this point, who even knows? Like, Australia and New Zealand can't even play online right now, and the game doesn't have local co-op. So you bought a multiplayer game, you can't play multiplayer. Because the multiplayer is region locked in Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles.
I mean, it does suck that you literally all have to be at the exact... I mean, it's bad, and I feel it also isn't that bad.
Crystal Chronicles?
Because I feel like... I mean, yeah, outside of some of the other restrictions, I mean, if you're going to play a game together with someone, typically, you're literally only going to play it with them. So, I mean, at least, like, the issue... I mean, like, one of the issues that sounds like the most annoying is that, like, you all have to be at the exact same spot, and, like, someone has to catch up with each other if you want to join up with other friends. But, yeah, I mean, that is annoying.
Oh, no. It's worse than that. You can be at the same spot, but each of you needs to host a session of that same dungeon for all of you to be progressed. So, like, if you and I play, we would have to do it twice, because I would need it marked on mine, and you would then need it marked on yours. If that makes sense. So if you're trying to play through it together collectively, yeah, if you're doing it piecemeal and I'm just like, hey, you want to play Crystal Chronicles? Sure. Yeah, that makes sense because, like, okay, get to where I am. But if we want to go through the game together, how the local multiplayer used to be on the GameCube one, it requires every dungeon being played for us twice. If Ken was with us 3 times, et cetera. That's where it gets kind of weird, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
That's significantly worse. But yeah, so the point is, like, Torchlight...
I guess it's meant for siblings.
But you can't play local, so not even. I guess you could play online in the same room.
Yeah, I mean, people probably have their own Switches. They could play online.
I mean, that's what Nintendo's dream is. They want every household to have a Switch per person, so you're just living the Nintendo dream with that idea. Maybe there's a Switch and a Switch Lite in the same house, then yeah, it could totally work. But yeah, so the point is that's way worse than Torchlight. But you know, if they're going to fix things already, like with Torchlight 3, consider this one little nitpick along with the much bigger load times, like my formal request, and maybe the tooltips for letting people understand how the menus work. I still don't fully understand them, not gonna lie. But anyway, yeah, I feel like I kind of hijacked our Indie World segment there. Like, that was actually supposed to be a taste of, like, some of the games from the Indie World Showcase, and it turned into us complaining about Torchlight. But anyway, it was there were over like 20 games in all, which after like such a lull in releases was kind of nice to see. Like, to kind of like sum up Indie World, like it was cool to see that we have games again, especially to have some show up so soon. Like, typically with these showcases, and this is something you sort of alluded to earlier, you know, they announce a game and it takes like 2 more showcases for them to actually come out. And Nintendo World Report compiled a list of, I think it's like 30 games from these various showcases, going all the way back to when it was still called Nindies, that haven't been released. So like, Super Meat Boy is probably the poster child of this, as it's been known since 2017. Still haven't seen it. And then there's like, remember Mykonos Night Market, that kind of indie Animal Crossing that was revealed back in like August 2018?
Oh,
yeah, it's supposed to come out in early 2019. Nope. Or how about that cool dog slaying game, the Red Lantern, which was revealed in March of 2019 in the GDC time presentation for release later that year. And it's now a year later and we still haven't seen it. Like, we will link to the full list in Nintendo World Report on the blog post for anyone who's curious, but it's just kind of interesting that the time span these take. And to be fair, like, some do make it in their original window or very close, and others, like just right under the wire, like the last Campfire from Hello Games that was announced in March's Indie World this year, came out like 2 days ago, just shy of the other, just beyond the other Indie World. So they get there, but it was kind of a nice surprise to see some actually make it up front. Versus, we'll see it in 5 years, which I feel like I need to disclaim this. This is not an attempt to put any of the individual developers on blast. If anything, I think it's more of a point to make to Nintendo that maybe, like with their own first-party games, it may pay to tighten up the marketing cycles for their indies a little. Like, unlike major studios, these are small teams. It's harder for them to hit deadlines. They have fewer resources, less an ability to rely on existing engines or, as much technical know-how internally. And there's no business first execs that are like breathing down their neck about letting quality slip to meet a deadline. So because of that, like, these games just take longer. So I think it maybe is in Nintendo's best interest to do what they did with this showcase, which is have a good presentation with a lot more short-term stuff. Maybe almost to too much of a degree, because there were like, 6 shadow drops on the day of the presentation. It was Raji.
That was way too many.
It was.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Honestly, that probably contributed a little to me, like, just not deciding not to get a game right away, because there were at least like 3 or 4 that I was interested in, like, Hypnospace and even the one about the 2 brothers in stop motion. But after so many dropped, I'm like, I don't know which one to get. I think I'm just gonna wait a little bit.
Yeah, like, I mean, it was, I wrote the list down. It was Raji, Spiritfarer, A Short Hike, which we haven't even talked about, Takashi and Hiroshi, which is the stop-motion one, Manifold Garden, and Evergate, all came out on one day. Hypnospace Outlaw came out the week later. Untitled Goose Game's free co-op update, which I'm very much looking forward to, comes out next month. Hades and Torchlight 3 are in the fall. Like, there was a very front-loadedness that they could have, like, I mean, 1 or 2 a week would have been cool, and just caught, like, September of Indies or something, like. It did seem like a lot at once, but the idea of having, half the presentation right there is basically out before the holidays. Like, that's nice. That we don't usually get. But they could have probably rejiggered it. And, we talked about, like, Alpaca Ball before. That feels like something that, if they make the indie worlds a little more frequent and focus on shorter term, games like that would have a chance. And then the ones that are farther out, they can, revisit as they get closer, or visit for the first time as they get closer. It's just, they do it with first party. I don't know why they don't consider shifting the indie things to be more frequent, but likewise more short term, for lack of a better term. Because, it was a lot of shadow drops.
Yeah, Alpaca Ball does look like a sensible chuckle kind of game.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But we'll talk about it eventually when... I mean, I'm definitely getting that one.
Yeah, it's out in October, so look forward to that, listeners. But yeah, I think overall, like, it was a strong showcase. Like, it was one of the better indie worlds. There was a lot of interesting stuff in there, which made the next week's presentation, this past week's Nintendo Direct Mini Partner Showcase, I don't know. It made it feel that much more less so compared to the indie world. Like, what did you think of the showcase? Like, what game stood out to you? What did you think of it as a whole?
As a whole, upon my second viewing, I was like, kind of like the first one. It's like, there's a lot of variety in this thing. Like, every game just felt very different from the last. I mean, we have our, like, Dance Central? I already forgot what
Just Dance. Wow. One of the biggest selling franchises, Just Dance.
Yeah, one of the biggest selling franchises has, like, the smallest impact on me.
Yep.
Yeah, Just Dance. I mean, the fact like that even showed up, and we had that one DJ looking game that looked pretty interesting.
Yeah,
and even the Kingdom Hearts game looks like I recognize enough of these songs that, like, I'm kind of like tempted to play it. But at least from that presentation, honestly and surprisingly, the one that stuck out to me the most was Captain Tsubasa.
That's the soccer one, right? Based on the anime?
It's a soccer game based on like a soccer anime because, as you know, there's literally an anime for everything. If you listen to Quarantine Chronicles, you would definitely have heard of a lot of different types of anime.
Go pause this episode. Go back to our 8th Quarantine Chronicles. Just listen to those first 20 minutes because, there's an anime of literally everything. That's all I'll say about that. But sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Angel. But
I mean, I still feel like we're sorely missing. Is that the word, sorely?
Yeah. I think. I don't know the rest of your sentence.
I think the Switch is like desperately missing more like arcadey sports games. I mean, the hole hasn't been filled by Nintendo. I don't know what happened to Mario Tennis, but it just kind of came and went. Like, I played it, but I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong with this one. Like the way that Mario Tennis Ultra Smash was straight up like No, Aces I played a ton of.
Oh, you're talking about the Wii U one. Sorry.
Yeah, the Wii U one. Yeah, like the Wii U one was straight up like wow, Nintendo, really. But this one actually felt like some more love and care. I mean, there's still like some egregious like, why can't I just do like a 2 out of 3 sets right off the bat? I could do that in the N64 version and literally any version, but why not this one?
Right.
Like, there's some weird stuff with it, but for whatever reason, like, it just didn't have any sticking power for me. And a lot of people that I know own the game that also love the Mario Tennis franchise. But because we don't have like a Mario Strikers and a baseball, like I still like have this itch to want to play something arcadey that isn't a full sports sim because there's plenty of those and I'm just not a big fan. Like the most fun I have in FIFA is just slide tackling. That's literally all I'll do. And
that's how I play FIFA too. Game, that's funny. That's literally
the only way to play.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was funny because when I was one of the years they had FIFA in the Nintendo booth at E3, I was just slide tackling. And literally, the people I played against were like, "This isn't how you play FIFA." And I'm like, "Okay." And I just kept doing it.
This is how I play FIFA.
It was like, you don't understand. This is how a Nintendo non-sports gamer plays FIFA.
I mean, like, one of my favorite best accomplishments is actually getting DQ'd from a match because too many of my teammates had red cards that we didn't have enough for a full team, so we ended up.
Listen, we just cut our soccer teeth on Mario Strikers. Like, it's not our fault. If anything, it's next level games
literally
fault.
About
it's
like ramming into people.
Yeah, it's not our fault. Like, cut some slack, FIFA.
Yeah. So yeah, I play my soccer games the way you play Mario Strikers, and while Captain Tsubasa doesn't seem to encourage hating other people, the more fast-paced, like over-the-top soccer gameplay just almost feels like wow, this game looks like it could be really fun. Hopefully the frame rate performance is a little better than what we saw in the trailer. There were some parts that looked kind of like it may not. I don't know, like it could be annoying.
Was shocked they put some of that low frame rate in the 40 seconds of footage they showed in the direct. Like, you couldn't find anything that was faster frame rate. Is the game like that chuggy, for lack of a better term?
It's like, hopefully it isn't, but it just seems like the kind of game that would be really, I guess, hype and exciting for like some quick matches, especially if it does seem like a fast-paced and dramatic when you kick a ball into a goal and score it in. I mean, like, that's the kind of stuff that I want to see. But I don't know. So I see that it's like $59.99 and it has like a $79 or $89 version.
Is that the month one edition or whatever they're calling it?
Like the I forget what they're calling it, but it's like some kind of deluxe edition.
Yeah, because they're doing something weird where this is one I don't think I've ever quite seen this. So they're doing a limited edition, but they're only selling it. They're selling it digitally, but only until September 28th. So only the first month of release. And it comes with a bunch of outfits and special goal performances and stuff. But like, I've never quite seen that. Like, I've seen like, a limited run physical release or get the like deluxe edition that's always available digitally. But I've never seen them like do a time sensitive digital release. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, but it's like I think I'm gonna wait for it to be on sale or something, just because, or they're gonna need to look more into it because hopefully it could fill that hole. But as of now, yeah, there still hasn't been anything, especially like Mario Super Sluggers, which is like so close to being a baseball sim with how it still follows all of the baseball rules, but just has like enough like Mario twist into it to make it really fun. So I'm hoping this is kind of like that. It just has enough of a interesting twist to make a soccer game addicting.
Right.
And you're right, it is called Month 1 Edition.
It's interesting because it's the same publisher. I mean, Bandai Namco was...
there's an $84 one called it's just the deluxe edition.
Oh. But I was going to say, it's interesting that you make the Mario Sluggers comparison because, like, I mean, granted, maybe not the same dev team, but Bandai Namco is publishing Captain... how do you pronounce it? Tsubasa? Tsubasa.
Tsubasa, like Tsunami.
Right, Tsubasa, yeah.
Without the Nami.
Right. But yeah, they're publishing this, but they also were developers of Mario Strikers. So maybe, or sorry, not Strikers, Mario Baseball. So maybe this is what you're looking for. Like if that's how they kind of envision sports games in general as a company, this might be the closest you get, quite literally. They actually had, like, Bandai Namco in general actually had a pretty good, I think they had a pretty prominent, solid representation in the Nintendo Direct Mini because they also had Taiko no Tatsujin. They need to localize that name. But anyway, they had the Taiko drumming.
Taiko no Tatsujin. Oh, well, right before you get on that, like, I'm watching, I think it's a different... Oh, yeah, this is definitely a different trailer that what they showed at the Indie Showcase for Captain Tsubasa.
Does it look smoother?
And, yeah, it looks way smoother. And that trailer might convince me to get it. Because it actually showed that there is some kind of, like...
There's a slide.
Involved.
Oh, man.
Like, there's, like, a bunch of, like, crazy maneuvers it looks like you could do. There's, like, jumping attacks that look like happen, and it just looks really fun. It just looks...
I think you just turned into
the only thing is just, like, why does it have to be $60? Which is, like, it could be completely fair, but because I know I would also want my other friend to get it, it's, like, makes it kind of a harder sell, but...
You're so close to becoming the Futurama "Take My Money" gif. I could feel it through the voice call here.
Doesn't also help that I just spent, let's see, 280, like around $500 this weekend on miscellaneous stuff.
That's cryptic. Okay.
No, I bought a NECA, which I'll definitely get into in QC, but they released a pre-order for Bebop and Rocksteady / and Leatherhead, 4 Ninja Turtle characters that sell out instantly on Target and whenever this went out for pre-order, they would sell out instantly. Mm-hmm. And like literally like in less than like 15 seconds. It's kind of nuts.
Wow.
And they put out, and NECA has been doing a great job recently of putting out guaranteed pre-orders. You just have a week to pre-order, and they're kind of made to order now. Which is what I feel like I've been raving like they should do the whole time, but now they're finally doing it.
I see.
And so that's like $100
mm-hmm.
because it's 4 figures, like $25 each.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also bought a golden Famicom Mario watch that I know you have seen.
Oh, you bought that?
Yes. Yeah, I did end up getting it.
Nice. So nice. The what is it, 185 or whatever price?
Yeah, the one that's like 180.
So you got the Famicom one, not the Super Mario World one.
Yeah, I got the Famicom one just because it's all golden. It just looks classy. The Mario World one looks cool. There's also like a Boo one. I didn't know. I guess this is like kind of a side tangent, but like I didn't know Nintendo had. I guess these are recent, but I didn't know they had a line of like little fancy watches.
Well, they like wait, that they make or that they license out?
Well, that they license out. I didn't know they were licensed.
Yeah, no, Nintendo's all in on the IP stuff. I didn't know they had specifically watches, but it does not in the least bit surprise me anymore. They have glue. Did you see this? I think it's in Australia or Europe or something, but UHU, which is a glue company, has a marketing campaign where their glue sticks just have like Mario characters on them. Like, just because. Like, there's no connection. They're not trying to connect them.
No, yeah, I've forgotten that they had gone crazy with their license. I mean, we got the Lego and stuff, but I guess I was looking for just like a fancy watch. Like, I know there was a Godzilla one, but it was like $12,000 or more. Mm-hmm. And then I was looking for an Ninja Turtle one, but there was one that was made in the 80s, no, like in the 90s that it just sold out everywhere. It's all golden. And then I thought, like, hey, maybe Nintendo has some. They have a collection with, I think it's Alba, that some of them are square, some of them are round, but they're all metal, like metal straps, and they just look really, really nice. But then there's another collab with, I think it's Wave, but those are round, and that one does have like Mario vs. Bowser and has a little fire shooting. It's not animated, it's just static.
Right.
But there's another one with Mario and Peach, and damn, I mean, for $180, and a fancy watch, I definitely could do that.
Yeah, that sounds like a good choice.
But
I could never go back to normal watches now that I have the Apple Watch. I'm such a sheep, Apple sheep. But honestly, like I couldn't even tell you what I use this for fully. But once I have it, I just can't imagine having to reach into my pocket to look at a text. Like, what is this? 2010? So like, I couldn't go back. I know, but they do look really nice.
No, I mean, I know you've always like worn watches. Like I've also always worn watches as well. Mm-hmm. But with my like right now, I have a Nokia Steel series. I mean, well, I guess it's a Withing Steel.
Right.
Essentially, it tracks your heart rate. It does everything like health-wise that like most fitness trackers do, but it also tracks my sleep and can wake me up when I'm no longer in REM sleep, so that I have a smoother wake up.
Right.
Experience, which is great, but I realize I don't really use it or. Like, the features, I guess the health tracking features, since my phone, like, it's always in my pocket. It tracks my steps anyway, and those transfer over to the watch. Mm-hmm. I realize I don't really need to wear it all day. Like, I know if I had, like, an Apple Watch, it'd be a harder sell to get a Nintendo-themed watch.
Like, I put a Nintendo background on the Apple Watch.
Exactly, but it's also not official.
No, it's not.
It would have to be official.
I know.
But at least this way, I know I could just wear my watch when I go to sleep or when I do exercise, and then just wear the Nintendo Watch any other time.
Right.
So that kind of helped. And then the last thing I bought was a 1/6 scale $280 Kratos figure.
Oh, nice.
From Mondo.
Nice. Yeah, I think to your
one of those, it's been a while since I bought something that big.
Your point about the watch, now I'm on that train of thought. I think the reason I can't give up the Apple Watch is I don't want to break my move streak or not hit my stand goal. Like, I think I'm a slave to those rings. That's really what it is.
I mean, I wish Nintendo would put, like, at least like for your sake or something. I mean, you probably still wouldn't do it anyway, but like a nice like Nintendo themed watch face. Maybe I guess they would have to do it very minimalistic.
Well, they'd also have to work with Apple, because the only thing you can do with Apple Watches is photo backgrounds if you want to do an interactive one. But yes, I would be all for that. I'm thinking like the Mickey and Minnie one. Like, would you wear one even temporarily that just has Mario, or I guess only when you're like I know you put on the Mickey one when you were at Disneyland. Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I guess you could put the Mario one whenever you're, I guess, hanging out with us. Or whenever I'm thinking about Nintendo, which is just every day, all day. In other words, I just would always have it. Yeah. I don't know. I'd be down for a Mario one. I think they could do some cool stuff. So you're saying at this point you wouldn't get... There isn't any kind of Nintendo watch, no matter how nice it could look, that could get you... Well, let me put it this way. Is this game over on other watches in general? Even when I wore other watches, like analog watches, I never did like a themed watch. I always wanted them to be like just a watch. Like the Mario ones look really classy. Like they do look really good, but I feel like maybe I cave on that. But for the most part, I just wear a watch, and now it's just become an Apple Watch. But like I never, because they were like, they have like those silly Game Boy ones, and they had like other, like I used to wear a digital watch as a kid. With like the time per now and stuff, and they had like Pokemon themed ones and stuff. But I mean, you wouldn't want multiple watches to accessorize? No, I always just had one, which doesn't make sense, really. I mean, I get you. I mean, sometimes you just want something simple. You don't really have to think about it. Yeah, I mean, I occasionally, on rare occasions, will switch the band on my Apple Watch from my chain link one here to like a rubber one. You adventurous. I know. But I think recently, I just kind of felt like, you know what? Like, who cares? Like, I think this watch looks cool. And I'm still gonna wear it. Oh yeah, no, I'm not knocking you for that. I think it's awesome that you're getting it. I know you're not, but I'm very. I definitely. I came from that mentality at one point where I just wanted a very simple watch, and now I just want to see Nintendo more in my wrist. Well put. Put. Need to see Nintendo more. Just to have Nintendo always available with a slight flick of the wrist. Oh yeah, Captain Tsubasa. Yeah, so Bandai Namco. Oh yeah, and you were talking about the Taiko. Yes, I was gonna say they had. I actually thought they had a pretty good showing in the presentation, because they had Taiko no Tatsujin. How do you say it? Tatsujin. Thank you. For some reason, I put H in my notes instead of J, so I was really confused. Like it should be Tatsujin, but I wrote Tatsuhin, and I was like, that's not right. So I kept like mumbling off the name. But so this new one is actually kind of interesting. I think it's if I'm not mistaken, it's actually an adventure game. What? Yeah, it's the Rhythmic Adventure Pack. If I'm not mistaken, it's actually the 3DS spin-offs that came out in Japan now being up-resed into HD and put on Switch. And I'm interested in two reasons. In part because I'm going to be honest, I did like Donkey Konga back in the GameCube days. I mean, This doesn't have the conga drums.
You were literally, I think, the only person in the U.S. that bought it.
I probably was, and let me tell you, like, it was kind of fun. I mean, you haven't really lived until you've heard Donkey.
I really don't know why I didn't.
I don't know, but you
at least Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, like
Jungle Beat was great, yeah. But you haven't lived, frankly, until you've heard Donkey Konga's like magical, by which I mean awful, cover of Rock Lobster and conga along to that. Like, that is a life-changing experience. Like, in Garden State where it's like, oh, listen to this song, it'll change your life.
Lobster?
Yeah, so the B-52's Rock Lobster?
I'm guessing it has covers of a bunch of songs.
Yeah, so. Yeah, but Rock Lobster, right? B-52's the thing that Family Guy made fun of with Rock Lobster, like all that. Imagine conga drumming to that as a, what year did this come out? 2004. As a 15-year-old teenager in your house, just like jamming out to that cover of Rock Lobster with some plastic conga drums by yourself in front of a TV with some dancing monkeys on the TV. That is a life-changing experience, let me tell you. But no, like, honestly, like, Donkey Konga, I thought that, what?
I thought your parents must be proud.
Oh, they hated it. They hated Donkey Konga because it would, like, the drums make drum noises. They're actual conga drums of sorts. Like, they have, like, a pressure thing. So, like, I'd just be sitting there drumming away and they'd be like, what are you doing? But, yeah, so the gameplay, though, Donkey Konga, like that meter and how you do the drumming, I always thought was kind of fun. And the fact that this, like, I'm a sucker for RPGs that aren't RPGs. Like, the way Ring Fit applies fitness in lieu of an RPG battle system, this rhythm game applies the rhythm drumming, or I guess button tapping, in lieu of a battle system, but it's basically an RPG where he plays the little drum guy, Drumkin or whatever his name is. I think it's Drumcoon, Duncan. I don't know. It's something like that. But
Duncan
Donuts. You play as Dunkin' Donuts and you drum to Rock Lobster. But no, like this does seem like it's kind of a cool product. I don't know if I'm actually gonna get it now that I'm saying all this, but I do like the concept of it. It has 130 songs. Like, it seems like a good value for what it is. And in a holiday season without a ton of stuff this year, this is it's there. It's a potential. It's coming out in winter of this year, so I have an eye on it just in case. But I think the big surprise of the presentation, if you want to call it the big surprise, but Puyo Puyo Tetris 2. And I'm not saying it's a big surprise because, well, who would have thought there'd be a sequel? But, like, also they made the very egregious choice of removing the Science Bear character, who is by far the best character in the first game, always saying Tetris when people do not score a Tetris. And now he's gone. So it seems. He wasn't in the trailer. He wasn't in the character list, so that's a bummer. But no, the reason I think it's a big surprise is it's not very often that a puzzle game gets a direct sequel on the same platform. Like the thing with puzzle games I know is...
Didn't Tetris 2 come out on Game Boy?
Did it? Okay, so maybe some do. But yeah, but how many people think about Tetris 2?
I know, yeah. I know. And that's literally Game Boy.
But yeah, exactly. But yeah, and there's some exceptions to your point. Like Lumines 1 and 2 were both on PSP. The 3DS had 2 Tetrises.
Wait, that's how you pronounce it?
Isn't it Lumines? Lumines?
I always thought it was Lumines. But
maybe
Lumines...
I'm totally misremembering how it's spelled.
I mean, Illuminese makes sense because like
how is it spelled? Let me look it up. We haven't done this in a while. Real time Googling while we talk.
Real time
Googling. Lumines. Oh, I added an extra I. It's Lumines.
Oh, so I was right.
You were right.
Interesting.
Yep.
I just assumed you were right because
I said it with some bravado and confidence. But no, Lumines 1 and 2, they were both on PSP. The 3DS did have 2 Tetris games, but it only had 2 because they're by 2 different publishers. There's Tetris Access by Nintendo, which, if you recall, we went to a Hollywood bar to play. Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah, that was a weird experience.
Pretty cool.
It was like Nintendo tried to do a Tetris meetup.
Pretty random. But,
Nintendo tried to do a Tetris meetup at a bar, and it was like just us and Kit from Nintendo before he was like Kit from Nintendo, when he was just a random PR person for the company. So that was the experience. But yeah, that was their, they had Tetris Access by Nintendo, but then years later, Ubisoft did Tetris Ultimate because they got the rights. But more often than not, like, you don't tend to see direct puzzle sequels. It's one of those things where it's like, they'll make a sequel to a puzzle game, but they'll do it on a new platform, and then they'll sell it that way. Like, oh, well, you love this puzzle game on this platform. Now it's over here on this other one. You should buy it here too. So it's interesting that they're doing a full-on Puyo Puyo Tetris 2, and it does sound like it has some cool new stuff. There's a skill battle mode that introduces this new card system, including cards of other Sega characters, where they sort of, you play the cards, you can have 3, and those sort of do different effects on the battlefield. on top of your puzzling. And then there's a new story mode that's going to use that card system. And then there's a new tournament mode and a lesson mode and some sort of co-op boss fight mode that they haven't really described yet. So there's certainly like stuff if you like the first one. But what I'm kind of hung up on is why they didn't do this as DLC, because literally the rest of the game, everything else in the game is identical to what's in the first game. They're promising all the modes are back. So you're paying $40 for what amounts to some duplicate content, some not. Like, I feel like a $20, $25 DLC release just makes more sense.
Because I mean, they straight up said like it has everything that the first game does and a few extra modes, so it literally just feels like it should have just been an expansion.
Yeah, and it's weird because
a full game.
Yeah, because I own the original and I like it, and I don't anticipate double dipping for the sequel, even though I do find the first one fun, and I do think the skill battles are kind of interesting, like the card thing's kind of intriguing. But I mean,
and as cool as those are, but most people at the end of the day are just gonna go back and play vanilla Puyo or Tetris.
Right. And it does have the advantage over many puzzle games that there is a story mode. The original Puyo Tetris had as well, where it's all speech bubble dialogue and stuff, and it's really wacky and weird, but there is a story. So if you're really into Science Bear and the adventures of all those other characters, I think Science Bear has an actual name. I just call him Science Bear. But if you're really into all that, you could buy this for the story, I guess. But I don't know, Angel, you play it way more than I do, because especially against some of your family back in the before times and friends. I remember there were 2 a.m. Puyo Tetris bouts going on. Do you have any remote interest in getting this, or does it kind of go back to its
no,
exactly
because we could just keep playing the first one. Yeah, which is like I said, it's what we're gonna keep going back to. We would maybe do 1 or 2 rounds of the ones with the skills, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's why bother playing with the skills when we could just do normal?
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that I genuinely do hope it works out for Sega, because it seems like they're really trying to deliver some new stuff on top of it. It just, and the developers seem, one of them did at Gamescom did a presentation, a voiceover presentation about the skill battles and stuff, and he seemed really passionate about it. It seems like they're really on board, excited about these new modes, but it just feels weird that they're not just Super Bomberman R did a really good job of patching in new stuff over time, and it was an early Switch game. I don't know why Puyo, which came out about the same time, maybe a month or 2 later, doesn't follow suit. It just seems like the better way to do it. But I don't know. The other odd thing about Puyo Tetris is actually how it relates back to the showcase itself, in my mind, which is to the partner showcase. Is that it may have been the biggest new reveal in the presentation. Kingdom Hearts we already knew about. A lot of stuff we knew about, but in terms of brand new stuff...
It did catch me by surprise. Yeah. I was like, wait, what?
And what's weird about that is, I think this kind of leads to a conversation more about the general fan reaction to the showing itself, which was, not great. People weren't too keen on this because, even the last showcase had Shin Megami Tensei. And this one's well, what's our big surprise? It's Puyo Tetris 2. Which, first of all, do you think fans are being overly negative about this? Do you think they're being fair to it by saying, oh, that was the most boring direct? That was not, that nothing. I don't agree with they shouldn't have done it.
I think they're being too harsh because, one, I think it was either a mini or labeled as a mini or a direct showcase.
Yeah, it was a Nintendo Direct Mini Partner Showcase. It's the official name.
Yeah, so I don't really know what they were expecting.
Yeah, I do think one thing that Nintendo did not get credit for is they did specifically listen to the feedback from the first go-round last month in July.
They also didn't announce it early.
Exactly.
They also didn't announce it, ahead of time, so they didn't have people...
Exactly.
They didn't give people enough time to start, oh, man, we're going to get a Smash character trailer. And honestly, I had already forgotten that we still need 5 more characters.
Right. Oh, right. That's true. But yeah, no, I think
expectations have been completely quelled.
I think you raise a good point, though, that Nintendo, they definitely learned from the July one in that they didn't tease it. They didn't allow hype to build. They just put the presentation out, and it had more games. One thing that I noticed with this one is it was about double the games as what we saw in the July presentation, which was 5. But I do get the vibe a lot of folks have that was kind of a letdown because, everyone wants major news from Nintendo. And when Puyo Tetris 2 is essentially the closest we're getting to the Shin Megami double whammy, I could see why maybe people weren't keen on it. But I actually really like the partner showcase concept. I think it's a good value. It provides a good service of sorts. This is an opportunity for Nintendo, and I think it shows they're already thinking about this because they put in already announced games like Kingdom Hearts. But it's a good opportunity to create a monthly digest of what's going on with the Switch's third-party scene. There's some new announcements. There's summaries of reveals people may have missed. Apparently there's an obligatory free-to-play shadow drop in every one of these. Last time it was Rogue Company. This time it was War of Tanks Blitz. But I think the issue is using the Nintendo Direct name puts the presentation at odds with the fan expectations that come with that name. Like if it were me, I just call it a Switch Partner Showcase. Let it be its own thing. They successfully rebranded Nindies to Indie World.
Yeah, Nintendo Direct has way too much weight.
And that's not all Nintendo's doing. Fans ran with it. There's no doubt. But like for 7 years, it had a certain gravitas to it that it doesn't anymore with these showcases. And I think if they do a name change,
it really hasn't. I feel like people are always complaining about the Directs anyway. Has there been one that has been universally...
Oh, yeah, there were a few.
For like the E3 ones?
The E3 ones were... Some went really well, some didn't. But no, there's been a few that people are like, wow, that was good. Like, I think the last September one, a lot of people were happy with, if I remember correctly. Basically, when they do a lot of surprises, people are happy with it. And when they do a lot of, like, here's an update on the game we told you about, they're like, eh. Which, that's just how the game industry is. It's always forward-looking. They always want to know what's coming next.
They make me have to hear the same information about Pokemon every single Direct until the game comes out.
Then, yeah, you're going to be disappointed by it. But, like, the fact is, at one point, they did have announcements of first-party games, and that's what's kind of lacking right now. But if you take a step back, if you ignore that lack of first-party news, which is understandably overshadowing a lot of what Nintendo's doing in quarantine times. Like they've had, in this pandemic, they actually have a pretty diverse lineup of coverage these past few months. I mean, we've had multiple indie worlds for the indie game news. We've had multiple Pokemon Presents. We've had a monthly recap of what came out on the eShop in this video thing they call the download, which is like 2.5 to 4 minutes long of just a sizzle reel, essentially. They do it every month. We have the weekly shows with Nintendo Minute that spotlight whatever the hot thing they need to market at that moment is. Plus there's, eShop sales propping up older releases. They just the day this goes up, like today, they are wrapping the Share the Fun promotion where a ton of old games were discounted pretty heavily. Like Luigi's Mansion 3 was down to $40 or $41. So, adding a monthly, here's what's coming up next from third parties, that is not a crazy idea. I think it further helps augment their current offerings. It's just calling it Nintendo Direct. I'm sorry to tell you, lost control of that brand. Fans have too many expectations, and you're not going to be able to rein it back in. You should just pivot and give it a different name. And there's, of course, going to be people who I'm glad you agree with me. But I was going to say, there's, of course, going to be people who, like, say, well, even under that name, it's not strong enough. Like, a lot of people, they seem disappointed there's nothing on scale of, like I was saying, Shin Megami Tensei in this one. But ultimately, you're working with the hand you're dealt. Like, there's nothing in these presentations for some people because publishing partners don't currently have things ready to show. It's the same deal as what happened with Gamescom and Opening Night Live that just went on this past week. Jeff Keighley's, big 2-hour showcase. Did you watch it at all?
I watched an abridged version of it.
Yeah, I had it on in the background while working. Yeah. It wasn't like I wasn't paying that close attention. I feel like I didn't miss much.
Like I like some of the backgrounds he was in. It was like,
oh yeah, that was the coolest thing. Like that's the thing though. It was like everyone's like, oh, like the feedback I saw online was a lot of people being like, oh, it was boring, or there weren't any good announcements, or it was too slow, or this, that, or next. It's like, did you see his augmented reality standing on 3 screens? Yeah, like he put the effort in.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's whatever content the publishers are able to give him. Like, I didn't expect much on the Switch side of things. Like, I had my expectations tempered, and sure enough, minus a few, like, Bridge Constructor, The Walking Dead, and I think the re-release of Factor 5's, like, Turian, there wasn't a whole lot for Switch. But reading impressions after, including those from, like, non-Nintendo fans, a lot of people were just, like, hounding it and saying how, like, bad it was. It's just, like, it's not... It's fine. It's just this is the release cycle we're in, and there's nothing anyone can do to suddenly pull Grand Theft Auto 6 out of a bag or like Red Dead Redemption 3 or, like it is what it is, especially now with everyone scrambling over what little content there is. Like, would Nintendo have maybe wanted to reveal, I don't know, Jurassic World Evolution for Switch in their partner showcase? Maybe. It's out this holiday. It looks like a pretty good management sim. It was pretty popular on other platforms a couple years ago. But, Keighley and Gamescom might have gotten to it first. Would Nintendo have wanted to like show the Skywalker Saga Lego Star Wars, the new trailer for that? Probably. That's a big franchise on Nintendo platforms, but it's also multi-platform. It was just delayed to 2021, so the publisher is not going to do it to Nintendo. It's like people that are they're going to want Gamescom. So people that are like, oh, the showcases aren't showing this or Gamescom isn't showing that. It's like you got to work with what you're dealt. And maybe that means rebranding a showcase. Maybe that means adjusting the frequency of presentations, whatever. Like first party release calendar aside, it seems like to me at least Nintendo's sort of on the right track, even if fans want them to do more than they frankly can.
And again, people can get impatient. I mean, it is very unorthodox times, but honestly, I don't feel news has been that.
No, and that's the thing.
Unless you're literally doing nothing and only like playing Nintendo games, I guess.
And even then, it's not that. The only thing that's weird in the news cycle outside Nintendo is Sony and Xbox's game of chicken with pricing and release date. Like at some point, someone has to name a price. And the fact that it's now 2 months from launch and they're running TV commercials and no one knows how much stuff costs is weird. But besides that, like the news cycle isn't that crazy to me. I mean, it's just, at least in the Nintendo world, I think it's just a matter of Nintendo perhaps finding the right rhythm to everything they're doing, which admittedly is ironic given that third of the partner showcase was actually rhythm games. But, just finding that pacing and figuring out exactly like maybe we don't do an indie world, a partner showcase, and a sale all in the same 10 days. Maybe we do one at the start of the month and one at the end, like little things like that. But overall, like we're getting as much as we can get, I think. It's not for lack of trying. Nintendo doesn't not want to make money. So, yeah, I feel like people are a little hard on the showcase, I guess is my takeaway. And Gamescom, for that matter.
Chill out, peeps.
What? Oh, chill out, peeps. Yeah. Peeps. And not only that, but like Gamescom's still going. Like all this weekend they've been doing like IGN's been running daily shows. Like there's still stuff to consume. It's just maybe not games that are resonating with you. But it doesn't mean there's not games to consume. So like people just need to chill, yeah. But I guess before we go, there is one more topic. We've talked a whole lot about what Nintendo's chosen to show us, indie games, third-party games, but I haven't really talked about what they themselves are up to. And even if they won't say it, there is a report from a very reliable journalist at Bloomberg that will say it, which is the long-rumored Switch hardware revision, the Pro, if you will, is coming next year for real. And this report comes from Takashi Machizuki, who is basically the guy on the Nintendo beat. He used to do it for the Wall Street Journal. He jumped over to Bloomberg, I think, earlier this year. And anyway, he's the guy who correctly reported last year to be a 1-2 punch of Switch revisions, a Switch Lite, and, that minor hardware battery adjustment thing they did right before the Switch Lite. And he's now reporting that, sure enough, yes, there is a new Switch. It's coming next year. Angel, are you ready to buy a Switch again?
Oh, no. I mean, I don't know. It would have to be a substantial, not even like better resolution or anything, just like a substantial performance upgrade for me to consider getting a new one. Because otherwise, I don't know, like, I feel pretty content with mine. I haven't really run into anything.
Well, lucky.
I mean, maybe once the battery starts really dying, but I don't really play it in handheld mode a lot. So
lucky for you, according to Bloomberg, what Nintendo has looked at are 4K and higher computing power. Nothing's actually been finalized though, but I do think it's interesting that 4K may make the list since Nintendo, like, they typically shy away from the graphics horse race, right? Like, so I seriously doubt it's going to render in 4K, but the idea of having the Switch maybe natively scale to 4K instead of making your TV do it, that could be an easy selling point, and that would allow for them to have added computing power, maybe provide more stable, constant experiences with current games. Maybe it's something that does add a little extra oomph under the hood, like you're describing. But even what you're wanting and what I'm saying, like, it feels so un-Nintendo to me. Like, yeah, they always snuck in more powerful specs with every mid-gen, handheld refresh they've done, but they usually have something else too, like the 3DS had that analog nub.
Like DS, I mean, was it one of them just the fact that it could connect to the internet and get games? Like the DSi?
Well, the DSi had the cameras too. So the DSi was actually the most fully rounded, seemingly like new system while not being a new system, because it had the cameras, it had DSiWare. So basically they brought WiiWare to handhelds for the first time. I mean, separate set of games, but same concept. It had one or two other things I'm forgetting. I think it had something, a music player, like a proper one. I don't remember. It had a sound recording app. It had some other stuff, but they tried to make it like a multimedia device. And like, even if you go back to like the Game Boy Advance, they didn't do spec bumps, but they had changed form factors every time. So it's kind of odd that like the leading things that both, not odd, but different, that the leading things that both like you're looking for and that Bloomberg's reporting are the case are not these more forward-facing things. Like I remember when we, at the start of the year maybe, first talked about the Switch Pro concept, we did have the consensus that there didn't need to be all these very many new elements really, like, you know, quality of life tweaks, like maybe better battery or more memory for game downloads, like an SSD would be nice, or maybe more RAM so making porting larger games is easier. But it's odd to me, like it's striking me that, again, Bloomberg isn't pointing to any of that or any sort of interface change. No new outward like extra Nintendo-y feature. Doesn't mean it's not going to be there, but they're reporting that what Nintendo's looking at is like specs and doing the like arms race a little. And I was trying to think about why a company who's never competed for graphics and always zagged while they're zigged or zigged while they're zagged, or however you want to say it, like why they might be playing the like 4K game here. And I think if they go through a 4K, which we know they're
4K TVs are very inexpensive now.
Yeah, that's part of it. I think like if they go through a 4K, I think Nintendo's actually, I think 4K is becoming so prominent. Nintendo's trying to cater to their third-party partners in part to make them still want to make stuff because 4K is so prominent and their system doesn't do 4K, which is weird because Nintendo never really pays attention to third parties. But like, hear me out. The Switch has been able to take on ports, you know, from PS4 and Xbox One games decently enough, and it can definitely handle PS3 and Xbox 360 no problem. But right now, there's an accepted discrepancy in graphics between what someone who has a PS4 has and what they see on their Switch. And the trade-off is, well, this one's portable, so it's okay. But if you fast forward, let's say, to next holiday season, right? So PS5, Xbox Series X, they're well established. Their level of graphics are established. They're, you know, things like Microsoft's pledge to initially do cross-generation releases of their first-party games, that's kind of winded down by then. Now you have this bigger gap where a game looks a certain way on PS5 versus Switch, and it's that much more of a difference. And all those third-party games that are capturing a chunk of the Switch audience right now that Nintendo doesn't cater to, you know, the Witcher 3s and Doom Eternals of the world, that could begin to dry up, and Nintendo doesn't make games for that audience. And maybe third parties are going to still downscale their games, but Switch up to this point had one big parity check mark, which is if you plug your Switch into your TV, it hypothetically outputs in the same 1080p resolution as standard PS4 or Xbox One game can. When you're talking about PS5 or Xbox Series X, that's not true anymore. The new baseline is 4K. So if Nintendo can say it does 4K and actually spit out some sort of 4K input, not render in 4K, just like up-res itself, even if the games are still downgraded somewhat visually, they are keeping that same distance, so to speak, between themselves and the traditional home consoles that they've enjoyed these first 3 years, at least as a marketing bullet point, if that makes sense. Like, I think what I'm basically saying is they're moving up their baseline to stay with the baseline of what the games that are going to be ported down to it can do. So it doesn't feel like as much of a discrepancy. Because being able to go, it's going to look a little worse than my Xbox, but at least it runs the same if I put it in the TV, that's not going to be true anymore. But now they can kind of say it still is true with the Switch Pro or whatever they call it. So that's my theory as to why they may actually be playing the spec game for once. I don't know if I would get a 4K rendering Switch. Would you get a 4K rendering Switch? You don't even have 4K TV, do you?
No, we still have a 3D TV.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I don't have a 4K one either, so.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't even know if it's because, like, we've just been used to, or it's like the norm that you don't go to a Nintendo console for power.
Yeah.
That it doesn't even come up as a desire because Nintendo has proven time and time and again that doesn't really matter. But there is also, I guess, the added benefit that if you did have way more power, there is things that Nintendo could come up with that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to look better, but it will just do these more amazing things that we probably haven't even thought of.
Yeah.
But that being said, I do have a super powered up PC.
Right.
That I'm actually playing an upcoming Switch game on, Alien Isolation.
It's already out on Switch, by the way.
It is out on Switch? Oh, wow. I thought it was still out a while.
No, it's. I believe it's out. Well, I will double check that while you talk about it. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's out. I think it's only like $35 too.
Oh, wow. That's cool. But yeah, point is, between that and I guess my still working PS4 Pro, I don't see a reason to get one.
Right.
But
how is Alien Isolation so far? Or do you talk about it when it's like further along in your progress?
It's still too early to really say. I mean, I've only just like barely encountered the aforementioned Alien. But But you know, so far it is like shaping up to be the game I was looking for. That even though it predates Resident Evil 2, I've been looking for a game like Resident Evil 2, and it almost seems like it might be better. But yeah, we'll just have to see.
And it's stuff like that I think, you know, if Nintendo wants to continue to have those games available and have people buy them, because we buy Nintendo stuff for Nintendo stuff. Like, we buy Switch because we want Nintendo games. We don't care if they're, you know, when stuff was in HD and the Wii wasn't, it's like, oh, I guess, okay, it still looks nice. But I'm just thinking, like, there's this whole other market now of people who are like buying portable versions of existing games, and it's just that much more noticeable when they aren't at 4K, when everyone else is well into 4K. So that might be why. But yeah, I wouldn't like get it unless I get a 4K TV. And maybe, you know, at that time, if like,
wait, you don't have a 4K?
I don't
TV?
have. I've had the same TV since 2012, I think. A Samsung. Since I got it right around the time of the Wii U launch, like the next week. I got it on Black Friday. And it's a Samsung, just standard 1080p. But I will eventually probably have a 4K, and then maybe I'll get a 4K Switch if it's a thing. And I'm sure I'll have some other little improvements, like a better battery or maybe a dock that doesn't risk scratching the screen. So that'll be nice. But for now, I'm kind of just like, I'm kind of crossing my fingers that Nintendo does something more Nintendo-y with it too. Just because that, like, just feels like what they do, you know? Like, I like Nintendo. I like weird Nintendo. I've said it before, I say it again. I like weird Nintendo. But then again, I also didn't buy a new 3DS, so I guess I don't like them that much. But there is one other part of Bloomberg's story. It's a bombshell. We need to make sure we mention it. The new Switch will have new games. Yeah.
What?
The Switch will come out. When they release another Switch, they will release games. Who would have thought? But the only reason I'm pointing it out is it's just funny to show, like, you know, because Nintendo's lineup has been so quiet this year, it's now apparently important to note that when they launch new hardware, it will in fact also launch with games. Like, what used to be a given for a game console now has to be like spelled out.
That's good to know.
Yeah. And he actually goes on to say in the report that this year was going to be lighter for Nintendo anyway, with the idea of when they do the Switch revision next year, they would have a whole bunch of games for both casual and core gamers. So I imagine.
Oh, man, I really hope one of those games is a Mario game and a Zelda game.
You know, well,
I guess
I can guarantee. I can guarantee you there is a Zelda. We know Breath of the Wild 2 exists, and if I put money on it, I would say, I tweeted this the other day, but Switch launched with Breath of the Wild, Switch Lite launched with Link's Awakening. It's only right that, you know, this next Switch is going to launch with Breath of the Wild 2. Like, it's going to happen. I originally thought it might be Metroid Prime 4. Like, I remember when we did our predictions, I think it was at the start of this year, I was saying, like, oh, well, they could do Breath of the Wild 2 this holiday season. Then when they do an eventual Switch Pro, use Metroid Prime 4. You know, that's such a graphical showcase with all the intricacies. That'd be great for 4K. I think it's still well in development, but they did a couple weeks ago put up a job listing for a lead producer for the game, of which there can be many, depending on what part of the game you're working on. So it's not like the game's not being worked on. But if they're putting up the listing in August, I don't think Metroid Prime 4 will be coming in 2021 alongside a Switch 4K. I think Breath of the Wild is now going to be the showcase game. But to be fair to your Mario Zelda joke, Angel, there is other non-Mario Zelda things that Nintendo we know are working on. There's Bayonetta 3, there's Detective Pikachu, there's new Pokemon Snap. Apparently HAL has gone on record saying they are working on another Kirby. Shocking, I know. Although it hasn't been officially announced. Pikmin 4, if it exists, if Pikmin 3 Deluxe is really priming the pump, that could be next year. So, like, there is stuff that's more than just Mario and Zelda. But time will tell. Time will tell. I think the point is like, we may be in a lull now, but there are good games to come. Or at least games. I don't know if they're good, but there are games to come, and we will, of course, be covering all of them at that time. But for now, unless you had anything else, I think that pretty much does it for this episode. This weird Kevin-less episode. But yeah, well, okay. Well, we'll be...
It was weird.
Yeah, like it reminded me of ye olden days when it was just us for the first how many years.
Yeah, things are rougher.
Yeah, it's a lot. I don't know how we... our chemistry's so strange. I don't know how anyone listened for it now. But yeah, we'll be back next week with Kevin for our 9th Quarantine Chronicles. Kevin's going to tell us all about that insane decision he did to live stream for 24 hours straight. So I'm very curious to hear about his degrading
I know why,
mental well-being over those 24 hours. Why? And then, but then the week after Quarantine Chronicles, if you don't want to hear about Kevin's crazy 24 hours, we'll be back on September 13th with the next episode, the normal Random Tale podcast, packed with who knows what news. Like, does Nintendo have more presentations up its sleeve? Are there 6 more Shadow drops to come? Like, who knows? Time will tell. But you can make sure you don't miss it, all you out there, by following and subscribing to us. You can follow us on Twitter at @RamNintendo. You can subscribe to us on all the podcasting apps, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Pandora, Spotify. We're on YouTube at RamNintendo.com. So you can make sure you don't miss that. And you can also follow us individually. If there is breaking news, I'm sure at least one of us will tweet it. I'm JSR7. Angel is Weiro, WEIRO_O. And you can follow Kevin, who wasn't here, at KVN Gomi. So I think that just about does it. Normally Kevin has the last word these days, but he's not here. So Angel, I might bestow unto you this high honor.
I got nothing.